congratulations on making it to the championship game of your fantasy football league. All along, this was our entire goal, was to get you here and then for you to win. And so I hope you do win. We're wishing you the best of luck. And a huge thank you to all of you this season who have followed along, who have supported the channel, and who have joined the domain bandwagon. Obviously, we are very new at this. We're still very young. This is our second year doing it, and we grew our channel big time this year, all thanks to you guys. So if you watch the channel, if you click on the videos, if you've subscribed, whatever you've done to support us, just know that we super duper appreciate that. It means the world to us, and we are going to be back next season. We are going to be much better than we were this season, not because we sucked this season, although there were times where we did, but because we're going to continue to get better, and we're going to continue to improve the quality of our videos as we go. So thank you guys a ton. One quick note on these rankings, because of the way that the holidays fell this year, because of Christmas and how busy we are and things like that, we do have to record this before the Week 16 games. This is Saturday that we're recording this, and so we're not going to go through every single tier and talk about every single player in this video. We will go through and talk about the best and worst matchups, and then we will kind of have our video editor edit out. What the rankings you do see are going to be current rankings, so we will update our rankings before this video goes out so that you are getting the best rankings after the Week 16 results. We just had to record this video before Week 16. So hope you all have a Merry Christmas. Let's get into it, and let's start with running backs. I'll start with the best matchups. Saquon, as if he needs the best matchup. He has the Dallas Cowboys. Dallas Cowboys have given up the 6th most amount of points to running backs this year. Bucky Irving against the Panthers, obviously their first in points given up to running backs. Both of those matchups are going to be very good. Obviously, we're assuming Bucky came back and is more healthy in his injury. Sorry, I'm sick. Can you tell? JT playing the Giants. You know, it's a good matchup for JT. JT has been struggling recently. Hopefully, if you've got him in the championship game, if you've made it that far, he's kind of tanked some teams. You can kind of take advantage of that. Breece Hall playing the Buffalo Bills is a good matchup as well. Again, really some guys here, JT, Kenneth Walker, Breece Hall, that were supposed to be premier options for your fantasy teams that have struggled out the gate. If you made it to the championship with them, now you're looking at them having some of the best matchups. And so all these matchups are top 10. Tony Pollard playing the Jaguars, Tyrone Tracy playing the Indianapolis Colts, and then you've got Rashad White, you've got Gus Edwards, who did show some signs of life for the Week 16 game we've seen is the Chargers, and he did show some signs of life in that game. So he's got the Patriots this week. And then you've got Devin Singletary. You get into the running back twos for this team. But all of these guys have very good matchups for Week 17, and if you did make it to the championship game with them, they're going to be must starts all the way down. So I would be starting Pollard, I would be starting Tracy, White, Edwards, and again, on the screen is our full set of running back rankings. You can see how we have them specifically ranked. This is after the Week 16 results, and here are some guys with some bad matchups for the running back position in the championship week.
Yeah, so the first one is going to be Devon Achane. Again, this is not a don't start Devon Achane or anything like that. Just be aware that if you're expecting a ridiculous showing from Devon Achane, taking on Cleveland, they've allowed like the 25th most points to running backs this season, and I get it's the Cleveland Browns, so again, just something you want to keep an eye on. You will see Josh Jacobs kind of fall down our boards a little bit because he's playing the Minnesota Vikings. That's going to be one of the tougher matchups of the week. Guys like Derrick Henry and Joe Mixon, some of these, again, S and A tier guys that regardless of the matchup you're starting, just be aware, again, that it might be a little bit tougher for them than normal to be ultra productive, but you're still starting them regardless. Rico Dowdle is a guy on Dallas playing the Philadelphia Eagles who have allowed the second least amount of points to running backs this season. That has been a nice flexible option of recent, and regardless of that, if you have other options that have better matchups, better wide receivers, better running backs with friendlier matchups than Rico Dowdle, we would probably recommend that you go ahead and explore flexing them over Rico, because again, the numbers speak for themselves when it comes to Philadelphia and what they've allowed for the run this season. Same applies to Najee Harris taking on the Kansas City Chiefs. He's had some nice moments this season as well, but let's try to avoid starting him. Isaac Guerrero has another tougher matchup against Detroit. I will note that Detroit has had a ridiculous amount of injuries. It feels like they've had more injuries than any other team in the NFL this season, and that is massively impacted the defense as well. But with Isaac Grendo being banged up, with him, again, his health even being in question, if there's any other running back that you're thinking about starting on the Niners that isn't named Isaac Grendo, you're going to want to look at that as a kind of an iffy option. Guys like Ramondre Stevenson who have been inconsistent all year, and then a couple of backups here as well, like Jalen Warren and Antonio Gibson, you're probably not looking to want to start anyways if you're in a championship game, but if they're kind of your last resort flex options, just don't start them because they've got terrible matchups against KC and the Chargers.
So again, there's the full set of running back rankings. Now let's jump over to wide receiver rankings, and I'll start with the tougher matchups. Ironically enough, there are a couple things here. Number one, 6 of the top 12 wide receivers this year have bottom 5 matchups in week 17, and almost my entire team in the Flock League. So hopefully by this time I've advanced the Flock League, or big rip in the chat if I didn't. But Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jackson Smith-Njigba, and Brian Thomas, all top 12 wide receivers with bottom 5 matchups that you're starting no matter what, so it doesn't really matter that they have bad matchups. It does suck for the championship game. Now we get down to Jerry Jeudy. I still think he's going to be a must-start no matter what his matchup is against the Dolphins. In Week 17, T. Higgins, again, my third receiver on my Flock team, playing the Denver Broncos. I think both of these guys are still must-starts. I think Khalil Shakir is probably a must-start as well. I think DK Metcalf is somebody that, with the level of investment you have, I think this is where maybe the line is, like, maybe you start to consider flexing some of these guys out. I think DK against the Bears, I'm still going to start. Now, Addison against the Packers, with the touchdown upside, I still think he's going to be a start in Week 17. Regardless of what he does in Week 16, I do think that Addison, with the upside, is somebody that you want in your championship game. Jameson Williams has been a little bit more hit or miss. When you're looking at the game against the 49ers, that Vegas line projects to be about 46.5 as of right now, and so it does project to be not a super high-scoring game, and so, I would be a little bit more cautious with JMO. I think there are going to be better options that Nathan's going to talk about here. Same thing with Cedric Tillman against the Dolphins. Obviously, Jerry Jeudy has been getting mainly the targets and production there. Amari Cooper and Keon Coleman both against the Jets. There's my other wide receiver, Keon Coleman. Legit, all of my wide receivers on here. It's freaking ridiculous. And so Amari Cooper, Keon Coleman are guys I would consider flexing out. So same with, you get down in this range. And really, that's probably it. Brandon Cooks would be the last guy. Elijah Moore, I don't think you guys are starting those guys. And so all these guys have tougher matchups against bottom 6 or 7 defenses in terms of allowing points. I should say top, I guess, in points against. No, they're good against, so it'd be, you know what I'm trying to say. This is a bad matchup. Go ahead.
So over on the good matchups, you've got your S and A tier guys who either have, neutral, negative, positive matchup. You're starting them regardless. Terry and Nico have some of the most favorable matchups this week. Nico specifically I want to highlight because Terry's been so consistent all year. And Nico, since coming back from the injury, has been good. He hasn't been as elite as he was before the hamstring injury. But you're looking at the matchup against the Ravens. They've allowed the second most points to wide receivers this season. Nico could break the bank and win you a championship single-handedly in Week 17. So keep an eye on him. Then you've got guys like Flowers and Tyreek Hill who, when you're really ticked at him, you're thinking about potentially benching him, and maybe you have even benched Tyreek Hill in past weeks and it hasn't really even hurt you. But this week you are going to want to go ahead and start Zay Flowers and Tyreek Hill because they've got they've got Houston and Cleveland respectively. So those are matchups that you can't really turn down, and since they're both top options in their offenses, that's just something that with the upside alone, I know we've been saying upside alone for Tyreek Hill all year, but truly upside alone in the championship game, a lot of it is the fact that you're in the championship, again, amazing, but you got here by winning multiple playoff games, multiple straight games. It's difficult to do that in a league. A lot of it is parity. So you're just depending on the upside production of some of these guys, and Tyreek Hill is going to be one of our top options. You got some of the guys that you're kind of iffy about flexing every single week, like Calvin Ridley and Jalen Waddle, Deebo Samuel, and Jaden Reed. Every single one of these guys has really, really positive matchups as well. Ridley taking on the Jags. Jalen Waddle, again, just like Tyreek Hill, taking on the Cleveland Browns. Deebo Samuel taking on Detroit with all of their injuries, and then Jaden Reed taking on the Vikings, who have the worst secondary in the league when it comes to the points that they allow to wide receivers from a fantasy perspective. Again, it's anyone's guess who's going to be ultra productive in the passing game for the Minnesota Vikings or for the Green Bay Packers. But if you're expecting Josh Jacobs to have a little bit of a slower week, you've got to expect by default those receivers to have some good weeks. And Jaden Reed has shown that he does have really good upside, even though his floor is so low. So If you've got some iffy flex options, your depth's a little bit short, and you own a guy like Reed, Ridley, Waddle, or Debo, those are guys that I wouldn't be super afraid to start if you really have to in your flex spots.
All right, let's jump over to tight ends. Here are our full tight end rankings for this championship week. There really are two guys in the top 10 here that have great matchups. Jonnu and Pat Freiermuth. I think both of those guys, Pat playing the Chiefs. The Chiefs giving up a lot of points to tight ends this year, and then Jonnu playing the Browns. They're both must starts this week. Cade Otton against the Panthers is going to be a really good option. If you're streaming tight end at this point, I think Cade Otton would be one of the better options. Again, playing the Panthers, they've given up the second most points to tight end. They're top 4 and giving up points to every position at this point. And really outside of that, you get down too far to start any of these guys, and so I think those guys are going to kind of not be options. When you're looking at the bad matchups for tight end, again, it doesn't matter for Kittle because he's playing the Lions. Now we get down to Sam Laporta here. Sam Laporta playing the 49ers. There is some merit to saying, okay, maybe I'm going to sub out Sam Laporta this week. Obviously the 49ers have given up the second least amount of points to tight ends. Just know that. And at that point, I kind of go with your gut. It's going to depend on your league situation, what your tight end waiver wire looks like, what the depth of your league looks like. If you can afford to start somebody else on this list besides Sam Laporta, somebody within a couple spots, I think I would do it. But again, understanding Sam Laporta, he's been better recently. He's gotten more targets. He's been scoring touchdowns. And so that's important to remember as well. Mark Andrews, tough matchup against the Texans. I still think I'm not as worried about that. The Texans have given up the 8th least points, and so I'm not really worried about that. Tucker Kraft against the Vikings. Obviously, that's a tough matchup for them. And Hunter Henry against the Chargers, tough matchup. And then Jake Ferguson against the Eagles. And so all these guys are guys if you can get value or you can get production adjacent guys around them, you go ahead and do it. But really at tight end, I lean more towards hey, you're going to start the guy you have because you're probably stuck there anyways. It's going to depend on your waiver, and if any of these top options this week are on waivers for you. So that's the tight end position for week 17.
Yeah. So with quarterbacks, you know the drill with the quarterbacks. We've got your top 4 rushing QBs in Allen, Hurts, Jackson, and Daniels. So it doesn't even matter what their matchups are like this week. They're going to have a ridiculous amount of upside regardless. So kind of looking over that, I want to touch on Bo Nix and Baker Mayfield specifically because you got Nix taking on the Bugles and by default Joe Burrow taking on Denver, and then you've got Baker taking on the Carolina Panthers. With Nix and Baker, you want to be starting them. You absolutely want to be starting them unless you own one of these top 4 rushing QBs. They have by far the best matchups this week. Any quarterback that goes up against the Bugles defense is going to be productive. Even if they have a down week, they're going to score you 18 points. They have a ridiculous floor against them. It's crazy. Baker has been a little more inconsistent since all the injuries that they've suffered offensively, but again, against Carolina, you can't turn that down. And even looking a little bit further down, Bryce Young is the next green light that we have in our rankings list, playing Tampa, and he's actually been decently productive. So if you're kind of streaming tight end and you're trying to find a decent option, Bryce Young honestly isn't an awful option. When you're looking at the worst matchups this week, technically you've got Joe Burrow taking on Denver, but again, a lot of that's going to be dependent on, is Pat Surtain going to play? Is he still banged up from that ankle injury? And regardless, Joe Burrow has been a top 4 productive quarterback this year. You're starting him regardless. It gets interesting with Sam Darnold, Jared Goff, and Jordan Love because these are guys that you're considering every single week. Obviously, Sam Darnold only a couple weeks removed from a 5-touchdown performance, but taking on Green Bay, that's going to be one where, hey, I'm looking at the guys right above him, guys who are, again, pocket passers like Brock Purdy, like Baker Mayfield, like Bo Nix, like even Tua, that I would prefer to start in week 17 over Sam Darnold or Goff taking on the Niners or Jordan Love taking on the Minnesota Vikings. So keep that in mind when you're looking at who to start at quarterback, especially if you don't have one of those top 4 rushing QBs and you're trying to figure out what's your best option. Keep an eye on those specific matchups. Anyone involved in the Panthers Tampa Bay game, anyone involved in the Bugles Denver game, you're going to want to be starting.
All right. Wow. Hundreds of videos later, thousands of hours later. Thousands of hours, you think?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a long time. So,
yes.
This is it.
Off-camera hours.
Yeah, I was going to say, well, it's lots of prep and stuff like that. But again, we appreciate the heck out of you guys. Seriously, we're not going to disappear. I'll do a live stream during the championship week to do any start-sit questions. Make sure you guys are covered for the championships. Keep an eye out for that. But we'll obviously be around. Catch us over on Dynasty Domain. That's where we're going to be doing all of our Dynasty content and continuing to not only build the game of Dynasty, but kind of push it to new limits because we love Dynasty, and that's kind of where our off-season home is. So you can catch us over there. I would encourage you, if you don't play in a Dynasty League, jump over to the channel, watch some episodes, and then maybe jump in a Dynasty League. It's a lot of fun. So we appreciate you guys so much. the best of luck to you in your championship game. Hope you win your league. Hope you win money. Peace out. We'll catch you later.